Hello, I'm Anthony Gunn, and for Black History Month, I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Betty G Mason, the former superintendent of Oklahoma City Public Schools. How are you, Dr. Mason?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing good. I know that you were the first and only Black woman to be the superintendent of Oklahoma City Public Schools. What time did you serve?
What time did I serve? I think I served as superintendent from 92 to 95. I think that's right.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
What steps did you take in your career to become the superintendent?
Well, Anthony, it's a long story. But I finished college in 1949 in Marshall, Texas. And I came to Kansas City, where my family was living, and I got a job as a fourth grade teacher in the Kansas City, Kansas public schools. I stayed there only 1 year, married, and moved to Dallas, Texas. When I got to Dallas, we were not about integration and all that stuff. In Dallas, the Dallas personnel director advised me that Negro colleges were turning out too many teachers, and they did not have room for any outside teachers in Dallas. And because I was not a Dallas resident, that meant that they would not offer me a job. So he suggested that I pack my little grips and go back to Kansas City and get a job there. Now that's what I got in Dallas in 1950. In 1950. So I became an elementary school secretary in Dallas for 1 year. And then I left that. But I won't take you through all the other jobs that I had. But that's where my teaching career ended in Dallas, Texas. After 9 years, I moved back to Kansas City, Kansas with my daughter, whom I believe was about 4 years old. And Kansas City, Kansas said to me, "We do not want to hire women who are married. And although you're not married now, you have to promise us that you will not get married if you take a job in Kansas City." And I told this guy, his name was D.W. Lewis, and he had been my principal when I was in Kansas City the first time. I told Mr. Lewis that I didn't even have a boyfriend, but I would not promise anyone that I would not get married. So that took care of that as far as job was concerned. And I went into another direction in Kansas City. I became a banker, and I did that for, I think, about 9 or 10 years. And then at one of the high schools in Kansas City, there was a man named Saul Thompson who had been the supervisor of Black schools when I was there before. And he had visited in my classroom more than once. And he came to see me while I was working at the bank and told me that it was a shame that I was wasting my teaching skills trying to teach old people how to balance a checkbook. And I needed to get back into education. And so I told him I was busy doing something else, but as soon as I got through with the project I was doing, I would come and see him. In the end, I went back into Kansas City as a high school English teacher. And that's what I got my degree in college in, I got my degree in English literature. And so I went back there and I did that for a year. You see, Anthony, you asked me how I got where I am. It's quite a story. I did that for 1 year, and although I liked teaching very much, and I liked working with the kids, I did not like the Kansas City, Kansas school system. So I left it after 1 year and went back to the bank for 1 year. And then I went over to Kansas City, Missouri, because somebody else called me and said, you ought to be teaching school. I went to Kansas City, Missouri, and I became a 4th grade teacher. I stayed in Kansas City, Missouri for 3 years. And then the teachers decided, AFT, that they were going to go on strike. And I decided I didn't have enough money to go on strike. So I decided that my daughter and I would leave Kansas City completely. And we went to California. Got into California. I was hired by the Berkeley School District. And I'm going to make this just as short as I can. In Berkeley, I worked as a reading specialist, an assistant director of Title I schools, a vice principal of a middle school, a principal of an elementary school, an assistant director of personnel, and behold, a director of pre-kindergarten and elementary instructions. I did all of those jobs in 10 years. Interestingly, I had an aunt who called me on the phone and said to me, Betty, you need to be very careful. These people are moving you around too much. They might be trying to get rid of you. And I said to my Aunt Joyce, as long as the paychecks keep getting bigger, I'm not worried. So after I just got tired of all the drama in Berkeley, California. And I decided I wanted to come back to Oklahoma. I always wanted to live in Oklahoma. I don't know why, but I did. And I had a friend to tell me of a vacancy that was coming up in Oklahoma City. And I applied for it and I got it. That's when I became the director of high schools and adult education in the Oklahoma City Public Schools. And as you said, I was the first woman to hold that position. What happened after that? Oh, after I got through, I did the director of high schools, I think for about 3 years. Then I became assistant superintendent of schools. And I did that, I think, for 3 years. And then I applied for the superintendency of Gary Public Schools in Gary, Indiana, packed up and moved to Gary, did that for 3 years, and decided to come back to Oklahoma. When I left here, I told them I was coming back because I really wanted to live in Oklahoma. So I came back to Oklahoma and served as special assistant to the superintendent. I think that lasted for about a year. And I ultimately became superintendent of schools, Oklahoma City Public Schools. It's quite a journey, but that's my journey.
Yeah, that's a lot of moving around, but I'm sure you've learned a lot.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said that's a lot of moving around, but I'm sure you've learned a lot.
Yeah, you're right. That is a lot of moving around. And I did learn a lot.
I know that when you were superintendent, you started Classen School of Advanced Studies. Why did you do that?
Well, you know, as a leader in a school district, you always want the best for your children. And I had the opportunity, or the ability to look at students' performances and test scores. And I decided that we had, just from looking at the test scores of children, that we had a lot of brain power in our school district. And I came up with the idea of developing a school for challenging students who deserved a challenge as they went through their middle and high school years. And out of that came the notion of coming up with a curriculum that would address the abilities of a certain group of children. The principals and teachers and parents would make the decision as to whether or not the children would be able to meet that curriculum that I had in mind. I just wanted to develop the program and let them do the rest. So that's what we did. We said that these children would have to be at a certain grade point level. Their parents would have to be supportive of them traveling from wherever they lived to this one building, and it was Classen High School at the time. And we were going to just redirect everything that went on in that school. And when I presented this to the board, they loved it because interestingly, 3 of our 7 board members had kids in high school. I presented it to the principals, they liked it. Everybody liked the idea, but they didn't really think we'd ever be able to pull it off. But it went off without a hitch. And I think, and then Dr. Guy Sconzo, who was the assistant superintendent at that time, named the school Classen School of Advanced Studies. And how old is it now? Some 20 odd years old?
27, I think.
How old is it? Do you know?
I don't know, but that sounds about right.
Yeah. So that's Classen. And now I'm so glad that while they have done some relocating of the program, I'm glad that they're keeping the name, because there are a lot of young people out there who are very proud to say that they're graduates of Classen School of Advanced Studies. And I'm proud of all of them, even the teachers.
That's really impressive. Well, thank you for your time and sharing our history, and have a good day.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope you all have a good Black History period, okay?
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.